Hey, so to kick us off, I'm going to start with introductions and we're all going to introduce ourselves. I'm Camille Mortazadeh, Director of Strategy and Insights at Civilian Agency. We are an agency that works on a range of California public sector campaigns. We don't sell things. It's very much oriented towards social justice causes. And we were thrilled to be working with the Office of the California Surgeon General on creating this campaign. And I will now pass it to my colleague, Janine.
Bosho ni connect, Janine Miskonagos Nadejnakas, Bodwad Minadat, Shishibaniak Nagazan, Bidigek. Hello, friends. My name is Janine. My traditional name is Miskonagos, which means Red Star, and I'm Potawatomi. I'm enrolled in the Citizen Potawatomi Nation from Shawnee, Oklahoma, but born and raised here in Sacramento, California. And I am the Director of Partnerships at the Social Changery. The easiest way for me to describe it is that we're a public health communications consulting firm. And so we work with usually statewide or local agencies just to support social justice and other public health movements. And really, my whole job is to ensure that the community is really central in everything that we do, and taking from the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us, and that anything that is supposed to be led by the community is actually led by the community. And so we were very excited to be able to partner with Civilian and the Office of the Surgeon General on this project. And I will pass it over to Satara.
Hi everyone, my name is Satara Harsamizadeh Tehrani. I'm a Live Beyond campaign youth advisor, and I'm also a program coordinator at UCSF Center for Child and Community Health. And I'll pass it to Paul.
Hello, my name is Paul Raymond Wolf Steele. I am one of the youth ambassadors for the Live Beyond program, and I've been working in the wellness field specifically for natives my entire life, so I'm happy to be here.
So much. And as you'll see, we have a lot of other folks we've partnered with. So here's some of our main partners. This campaign is part of the state's Children, Youth, and Behavioral Health Initiative, which is an unprecedented investment the state has made into children and youth behavioral health, and really thinking about kind of the full spectrum of care for the young people and their families in our state. But lots of other partners we'll dive into. And just for housekeeping, feel free at the time to put any questions in the chat. We may answer them as we're talking, but also we have some time at the end to talk through. This isn't a huge group, so we can keep it very informal, but feel free to put any questions in the chat as we go. But we are so excited to talk about this campaign, and really, hopefully it's a chance to think about how you can take it back to your work, or any of the research and insights that we are sharing with you today can apply to the work you do as well. So with that, I will begin. So really, we're going to talk about what this campaign's goals and audiences were, how we developed our campaign advisory, a lot of the insights and learnings from youth, how that really informed the look and feel of the campaign, youth co-creation, the native adaptation work, campaign resources, and we'll end with Q&A. And again, I think this is about this campaign, but many of these learnings can apply to a lot of the youth-centered work that many of you all do. So real quick, as I mentioned before, this is a campaign from the Children Youth Behavioral Health Initiative. This was a huge initiative from the state to really change how our system is built. And many of you today are here to talk about the work that you're doing and maybe some of the work streams that you are in. There's several public awareness work streams that the CYBHI has. One of them is a campaign to really talk about ACEs and toxic stress. And that was really the goal of this, is to really increase public understanding and give youth and young adults across California with the resources and strategies they need to manage toxic stress, heal from adversity, and end cycles of trauma. So real quick, I don't think I have a poll, but how many of you know about ACEs and toxic stress? Feel free to write in the chat. You do? You've heard about the topic before? Or rather, how many have not? No? I'm checking the chat and I don't see anything. So I'm going to assume, so as we all know, ACEs and toxic stress, ACEs are 10 events that can happen before the age of 18. Studies have shown they have profound impacts on your health and really kind of lifespan health, your mental health. And they come into really three buckets. It's household challenges, personal experiences you've had, household dysfunction. It can be physical or verbal abuse. It can be living with a caregiver who has had mental health challenges, substance use challenges, or a caregiver you've lost or who has been incarcerated. Those are a few of them. But these are the ones that were really studied through a landmark study that actually happened here in California with some folks at Kaiser to really demonstrate the effects. But as I'm talking, we all know this is very scientific. These are very complex terms. And so really trying to talk about these things in a way that's relatable to youth was our challenge in making this campaign, and something that people felt like they would embrace, and it wouldn't be something that would be too jargony or they'd be turned off on. So with our campaign, we wanted to make sure to drive an increase in public awareness so people know what this is. But awareness isn't just the only thing we're trying to do. We also want to really support that behavior change. So what are the things you can do if you have experienced ACEs and are currently experiencing toxic stress, or if you have ACEs and want to heal? We don't want this to be a, hey, what's my score and this is my fate is sealed, but like, what are the things we can do? And we know there are things we can do. And we're going to do this by increasing knowledge, really shaping attitudes and beliefs around the topic of ACEs, building those skills and inspiring that action, whether it's doing something at home, seeking additional support, but thinking about the range of options young people have. Before we started this project, we worked with RAND to really do a statewide assessment of ACEs and toxic stress. Now, a lot of studies have already been done to kind of look at national and California prevalence rates. A lot of work from ACEs Aware has looked at ACEs rates amongst the Medi-Cal population across the state, but we did an independent survey to really look at this specific group of youth, 16 to 25, as well as caregivers of youth and young adults over the age of 5, because we know First 5 does a lot of work for early childhood, so we're trying to really think about our audience very specifically. Not surprisingly, similar to national trends, we found that 3 out of 5 youth and caregivers, 60%, have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. 23% of youth and young adults in our survey have experienced 4 or more ACEs, and we know that if you have experienced 4 or more, that puts you at greater risk for many of the health and mental health challenges that they're attributed to. And then 30% of caregivers experience 4 or more ACEs. That's actually a little bit higher in California than it is nationally. Not quite apples to apples when we talk about the ages of kids, but still that was a little bit higher. But the interesting thing about our survey was, and this is really where our campaign comes in, was only 10% of the people that we surveyed, is about, close to 1,200 people, actually even knew what this term was or knew what this meant or could accurately talk about ACEs and answer questions about it. So we knew we had a lot of work to do. And this was going to be our kind of baseline assessment. We're actually working with RAND currently to evaluate our campaign to see if we've made a dent in actually moving the needle and helping people understand what this term means and what are the things they can do to heal. That's not ready yet, but we'll hopefully share back with that soon. And when we think about our audiences, we really wanted to focus on youth and young adults. We're looking at the 16 to 25 age range. Now, why this age? When we look at brain development, this is really when teens are becoming more independent and they're having a chance to make sense of their experiences from childhood. They're also developing relationships. We know that's very important to young people. So really thinking about this time to really help people make sense of things they may have experienced in their childhood that are impacting their daily life, impacting their relationships. We know that that is what young people really care about. And so how do these show up? Secondary, we're thinking about parents and caregivers. And also last, we're thinking about these other supportive adults, healthcare providers, educators, early care providers, looking at different pediatrician and FQHC networks. We're working with community colleges and lots of other supports to really think about where our audience is spending time. Okay, so developing, that's kind of giving you the lay of the land of our audience and our goals of this campaign. What was our advisory? At Civilian, we try to be very intentional that we are not going to be the experts on everything. There are plenty of people across the state who are experts in their own communities. And so obviously, when working with youth, it was critical for us to actually work with youth and have them be advisors on our campaign. So one of the first things we did was listening sessions across the state. This is just a smattering of some of the organizations we worked with. We actually have a report online on the Surgeon General's website if you want to kind of read more about what we learned. About 100 participants or so, but lots of us, many CBOs, youth serving organizations, and some tribal partners as well were in the mix when we started talking about like, well, what do we want this campaign to be about? What is the biggest need? Where do we find those barriers when people talk about this topic? And knowing that in a lot of cases, it's very stigmatized. And one of the really wonderful things we've done, and we'll have Satara talk about this a lot more, was work with our partners at ACEs Aware to really cultivate a youth and young adult advisory group. This is a list of a lot of our youth and young adult advisors. Many of them have lived experience with ACEs and toxic stress, but as you see, they're also very diverse. different backgrounds. They're from different parts of California. And we meet with them almost monthly, but probably more so in the beginning to really have them play a huge role, not only in what this campaign would be, but also the things that we make with the campaign. So with that, I'm just going to pause and pass it to Satara to kind of talk a bit more about the Youth and Young Adult Advisory.
Thanks, Camelia. So at ACEs Aware, we have 6 young adult patient advisors and facilitators who come from disproportionately impacted communities, and they actually co-design and co-facilitate the 15-member Youth and Young Adult Council. And as Camelia mentioned, we meet monthly, together we form a group of 21 youth and young adults who represent all 10 regions in California. And we represent lived experiences, including being immigrants, living in rural communities, and being system impacted through the foster care, incarceration, or being unhoused. And our group was actually recruited through a statewide call that basically used a variety of different recruitment strategies, such as word of mouth, social media, recommendations, to be really able to engage with the full range of perspectives covering Medi-Cal's diverse youth and young adult population.
Thanks so much, Satara. And yes, I think it was from the very beginning, just really talking about this topic and how people talk about it. What are young people thinking? There's some really interesting things, lots of analogies to thinking about astrology and kind of this idea of your journey or your path. Healing isn't linear, and we'll hear more about that in a bit. But an amazing group, a super dynamic group, and they've also all been trained as, they've also all received media training. So many of them also do a lot of our press and our outreach events. So they are very much embedded in this campaign and also going out into the community and doing work on behalf of the campaign. So also with that, we worked with the subject matter expert advisory group. It included the former Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, in addition to the current Surgeon General, Dr. Diana Ramos, who gave a talk this morning, but also various other subject matter experts, researchers in the field who work in this space. And so we meet with them right now, it's about quarterly, but initially it was much more frequent to make sure that our campaign is scientifically sound. We're presenting the best evidence, the facts. And so we're trying to blend the way young people want to talk about this, but making sure that we're being very fact-based and finding that sweet spot in between. So when we did this process, lots of insights. I'm here to share just kind of a very high level of what are the things we heard, but also how do they relate to what we created. And I'm going to pass it to Satara to kind of talk through all these.
So in addition to what Camilla shared earlier in the slide, in terms of like the low awareness and knowledge of what terms like ACEs and toxic stress mean among youth in California, there are a few key barriers that we heard from youth when it comes to developing a behavior changes strategy. So one of those themes was that many youth have feelings of stigma and shame about their past experiences. And also many of them are at various stages of being able or being willing to seek support for ACEs and toxic stress. And then also we kind of heard that there is pressure on young people, that it's kind of like up to them to change cycles of trauma. However, this is more of a community issue, and the burden should not solely lie on young people. Once the youth and young adults learn about the effects of ACEs on their lives, they are willing to take action. We also learned that there was a kind of a theme of mistrust when seeking out support services. And many people shared with us that seeking out help is not easy, and it can be hard to find help. And another theme was that healing is not linear, and journey toward healing is not always clear. And it's important for young people to recognize that healing is defined differently among different people, and that the fact that it also takes time. And lastly, another theme was that many of the young people shared that it's important to acknowledge root causes or systemic issues that perpetuate ACEs and toxic stress, and we shouldn't blame parents or caregivers because sometimes many factors are out of their hands. Next slide. To just highlight some key perspectives from youth, we'd love to share the following 2 quotes from the youth that we engaged with and on their thoughts about what they wanted from the campaign. I think something very impactful is having someone who has been through the process of healing talk about how hard the struggle can be to bounce back from tough experiences. Give concrete examples of the struggles they went through and be honest if they still don't feel like they're completely healed. It gives other youth hope that they can get better, but also that it's okay to not be perfectly healed. And we had another youth share with us. It's important to show that young people are not alone and that there is a reason for what they are feeling and experiencing, both mentally and physically. And both of these quotes really highlight and emphasize the importance of honesty in sharing lived experiences and the need for young people to be seen, understood, and also reassured that they're not alone in their struggles. Next slide, please. So, we've had, as Camilla mentioned, there were different listening sessions, gatherings, and other engagements that really led to the development of the core strategic insight. And we heard from time to time from youth and their caregivers that healing isn't linear. And you can see that, like the line right there. We use that throughout the campaign. Healing means different things for different people. And it really has to take into consideration where they're at and also the context. But there is this widespread recognition that healing is important and critical. And there are small things that you can do today and bigger things that you can do tomorrow that will help you start on your healing journey. And another thing that's really important to note is that, for young people, on top of their mind is that the relationships that they have and how they're relating and interacting with their friends, peers, parents, caregivers, other adults, or partners. So we talk a lot in our campaign about ways that ACEs and toxic stress can shape our reactions and our responses, and basically how we deal with adversity. And through our campaign, we share a positive and healthy ways that people are able to manage their stress and triggers and really focus on what matters to them. And this is, of course, a different approach that we have rather than just like focusing on the negative effects of ACEs. And I'll pass it back to Camelia.
Thanks so much, Satar. And I just want to underscore what you just said. It is a different approach. We're talking about the positive. It's important. We heard a lot from young people like, yes, I want to know the science and how this can affect me, but it's not, young people aren't thinking like 30 years from now, I'm going to get diabetes or these things. It's like, let's just talk about the here and now and why I need to care about this issue and this topic, understand what happened in my childhood or what are my ACEs so that I can do things to get better now, help my relationships now. So that was really important when we think about creating campaigns for young people, knowing that there is this future orientation, but we have to be very careful about the things that we say, not being so scary or doom and gloom. There's all these bad things that are going to happen because you have ACEs, but just really talking about this in the most positive, affirming way that we can. Okay. One question. Thanks, Benjamin. Yes, we would love to. We have toolkits and fun stuff we're going to share for you that you can share back. Okay, so how then we have all this great insights, great report, kind of getting all this feedback we got across the state from youth. How does that now translate into making a visual and creative campaign? Because also for young people, the aesthetics really matter. As you all know, many people are on social media, TikTok, Instagram, you call it, but you really have to stand out from the crowd when you're thinking about trying to make a campaign, not only out in the world, but also in the social media space. So as Satara mentioned, what really resonated most, we had a couple concepts we developed. We had young people react to mood boards, thinking through all that, but really the campaign, the message that really resoundingly won was this idea of live beyond. You can overcome the hurt, there's healing ahead, and we're stronger than our trauma. We had some other contenders too, but this one across the board for young people, for caregivers, what made most sense. And this is what our campaign looks like. So we have a really beautiful website called livebeyondca.org, and that's where you're going to see a lot of our campaign. And I'm not going to go through it now, but I think the key feelings that guided our visual look and feel is optimistic, encouraging, real. It's not a bunch of scary stats. We also are very mindful of talking about things in a very collective sense. We can all get better. It's not you or they, it's just all of us together, because we know ACEs are very common. And we talk about that a lot in our website and our materials. ACEs are very common. This is a common experience many of us share, and there are things we can do. And also I want to just call out a couple things. We talked about the squiggle line, and that's very intentional, but also the sunburst element that's positive, thinking about California, it's a sunny state mostly, but also these colors. A lot of young people really weighed in on like the color scheme, like this lavender you're seeing is really calming, and kind of thinking about a very different color palette and kind of making sure that we're leaning into things that feel cozy, calm, and really visually pleasing. And we have some stickers. We know young people really like to identify what they're into with those stickers. They put them on their water bottles, they put them on everything. We have some really cool other stickers to show you guys in a bit. But this is what our campaign looks like. And what we heard from our campaign was, again, I mentioned we test things. It was emotionally and motivationally impactful, optimistic, positive, really clear and straightforward. We're trying to be really clear about what this campaign is, but also what it's not. This really simple and direct messaging, and really trying to also not come off as pandering to younger generation, being very solid about what the messaging is and kind of what we can do. And this is just some quotes we hear from young people. It's less corporate sounding, it's positive, relays the essential message, and it jumps out at you. It also makes mention of trauma and hurt. Those are important things to talk about. But that this idea that there's things you can do if you're going through these feelings, and that there's help that's available. Here's our website. It's designed to be very mobile friendly because we know young people are on their phone. And so we do have some information. And so much of this campaign is about stories. And I'm going to be excited to show you some of those later on. So one of the things we heard, oh yeah, here's our social channels. So feel free, I can put these in the chat later, but we would love for you to check out some of the content we have on our social channels. Some great stuff, some content that young people have made too. And here is our campaign creative. So as you can see, we're very intentional even about the type of photography we use. The direction we have with our creative team is like, it almost looks like someone took a picture, like your friend took a picture of you. It's not very stylized portrait type photography. It's not very stock photo-y, but it's like pictures that look like, okay, this is someone that could take a picture of me. And we feature a lot of our youth advisors in our campaign creative too. So we'll show you some of that later. But this is what it looks like. Oh, show you that video in a bit. So I'd love to show you one of the commercials we made for our campaign. A lot of what we talked about first is just, people need to know what ACEs are. So that was a big task for our campaign. Let's help build awareness about what this is and that there's things you can do. So here is our kind of primary campaign commercial. We have a few other ones, but this one was geared to youth and young adults.
After the breakup, I realized some things. My trust issues, lack of boundaries, feeling scared all the time. They're connected to my ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences, like growing up around abuse, neglect, substance use, or other trauma. My ACEs still affect my mental and physical health, and my relationships. Hey, what's up, man? But I'm learning how to heal and live beyond what happened. And you can too, at livebeyondca.org.
Great. And really key to that campaign message was this idea that ACEs still they affect my mental health, my physical, and my relationships. So you hear him really talk about how it's something, and in the beginning, it starts off with him, it's after a breakup, he realized some things. So we're trying to really relate to what young people might be going through, where there's a moment where you might be like, why did this happen? Or what happened in that situation? And it could be related to how we were taught to cope or how we were taught to deal with things as a child because of ACEs. So that is kind of how we leaned into talking about this topic. Obviously, it's a 30-second commercial, so there's only so much you can say, but definitely trying to get the point across so as to help. And that commercial was aired across the state a few months ago. So now I'm going to talk about youth co-creation and what that really means. So many of our campaign advisors, Satara, Paul are here. They've played such a heavy role in actually making things that are part of our campaign, whether it's videos, what's called user-generated content, UGC, where they make videos on social, but it's been so key. One of the things I'd love to show and share with you is a video that several of our youth advisors helped us make, sharing their own personal stories and journeys. So I will play that for you all now.
ACEs are those messed up things that happened to you in childhood that probably shouldn't have happened, and you had no control over them whatsoever. And if not cared for properly, they can turn into long-term health impacts. They can even impact your life expectancy.
I knew that I had experienced trauma as a child and adolescent growing up, but I didn't realize how high my ACE score would be.
It led me to eventually end up being incarcerated at the age of 19, you know, where I was facing 23 years to life in prison. And I just correlate all of that to, like, you know, the traumas that I was enduring growing up.
So having that scale by the Surgeon General of positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress provides us a reference and a framework of what can and cannot be acceptable for people and their health.
Drinking teas, eating healthy, having a morning and night routine, just kind of soothing my nervous system.
Yeah, for me, the biggest coping mechanism that I utilize is movement. And right now in my life, that's boxing.
Some of the things I do to help me manage my stress. So I like to paint and I like to knit sweaters and different outfits.
I'll spend hours just kind of tuning out, just sketching different types of things. It definitely helps, you know, ground me.
I've been very blessed to find people who are on a similar healing journey. So we have similar vocabulary and similar experiences that we can relate about and we can share. I was able to learn through them how powerful I was and how I'm more than just my pain.
The person who had the most impact in my life is Crystal Guerra. She was my therapist inside of Orange County Juvenile Hall. She played a pivotal role in me being able to self-actualize and kind of realize that I wasn't my worst mistakes.
You're more than the worst thing you've done, and you're far more than the worst thing that's happened to you. You know, just because of the environment that we came up in doesn't mean that we're always going to be subject to something that's unhealthy and unpleasant, traumatic. At the point now where I am living beyond, you know, what I went through, and I'm working with people every day, young people, like helping them get their second chance, helping them live beyond some of those similar experiences that we had that might have been so traumatic.
Hey, we love that video, and just also appreciate our youth advisors for just being so open and honest and sharing their own personal journeys. So we keep moving on. Another thing that's been, so obviously that video was stylized, you know, it was something we filmed, but what was really fun to do with a lot of our youth advisors, including Setar, who's on the call now, is if you go to our website, we have a whole page on stories. And basically what we have done with not only our youth advisors, but also lots of different caregivers of youth, talking about who they are. They talk a little bit about their background, what county they're in, and then we have a questionnaire that they could have answered. They could answer any of the questions that kind of really told their story, how they heal, how they manage stress, what are the biggest things they've overcome. And so they are featured in our website and they also each submitted their own art and short stories. Obviously, we always pay youth when we work with them because this is their experience and we want to make sure that we are honoring their time and their efforts for this campaign. Also knowing that it's also a very vulnerable thing to talk about, but what's been really humbling to learn is so many young people today want to share. They want to help someone else and sort of really want to get that story out there. So for example, this is Jada, you saw her in that other video, but she also had a video talking about what we called aha moments. We briefed all of our youth to say, well, here's some things we want to kind of make content about. And a lot of what we heard is for young people, it was that moment. So they put together, now I know what ACEs mean, here's that aha moment where it like all clicked for me. And so I'll just play a little clip of Jada's video.
One aha moment that I had in regards to ACEs or adverse childhood experiences and understanding my own childhood was that was about the presence of supportive and safe adults to be buffers between children and their adversity. Because when I was a kid, I would always find myself going to either one of my parents' friends or someone at school or a mentor or someone and reaching out for a supportive adult to hear me and comfort me and everything. And you know, culturally speaking, when it comes to like the culture of my house or Black houses, I don't know, like what happens here stays here, don't tell nobody your business. So it was definitely an issue that I did that, but instinctually I just went to find a supportive adult. Now when I understand what stress busters are and that the presence of a supportive adult can actually be the thing that prevents my adversity as a child from being simply an adversity to being a chronic condition is, yeah, that the supportive adult is that difference.
And we have a lot more videos like that, but I think one thing I just want to point out is like, we didn't edit these. These are videos that young people submitted. They're very raw. They film them on their phones, but this is what's so key for young people is this idea of authenticity. And that was so key for this campaign to be able to talk about this in a very authentic way. We couldn't, find actors to talk about this. This is not something that, you can fake. So that was really key, but also I will say just building that trust with the youth and youth advisors, showing up at those meetings, talking, bringing them along in the whole campaign process, from when we first just, thinking about this from, to almost 2 years ago to where we are now. That relationship takes time to build, and then we can't just force that overnight. So I just want to call that out.
One
Okay.
aha moment that I
But please check those out. So now I'd love to pass it over to my colleague Janine and Paul, and they're going to talk to you about the work they've done with Native communities across California and this campaign. So Janine, Paul, take it away.
Awesome, thank you. So I am just going to kind of set the stage, for how we did the Native and tribal adaptations, and then really give Paul the chance to talk about the work because as the young person, he did the work. I just kind of set the stage and did the framework. So if we want to go to the first slide, so when Camellia had reached out to us and just said, hey, we want to do these tribal adaptations. I let her know, we were definitely happy to support, but it's really important to me that the youth in the community are at the forefront, and that this was not just, oftentimes our community is asked to look at something and check a box and stamp their approval on it, and that's it. And that's not how I do business. If we are really going to work with Native young people, they have to have the authenticity, and they have to have the say in what happens. We're not going to just put our names on something and say that we did it if we didn't really get to do it. And so luckily, Camellia was all about that and said yes. And so I was able to bring 4 Native youth ambassadors in. We also have, I already work with Native organizations anyway in the work that I do. So we brought in our Native orgs to say, hey, here's this opportunity. There's funding available. What does this look like? If we were going to bring in, if we were going to bring this to the community, what could this look like? If you work with Native organizations, you know that there's already great work happening. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I did not need Live Beyond to come and make a Live Beyond event. Like, there's already great events happening in Indian country. There's already movement happening. So what I really wanted to see was how could Live Beyond support and uplift what was already happening. So we work with a group called Native Sisters Circle here in Sacramento. We work with Kanokatai Native Wellness up north. We work with some organizations down south. And so we brought those organizations together and said, hey, what do you have going on? What does this look like? So we brought together some Native youth and said, hey, we want to train you in, yes, the talking points of Live Beyond, but we really want you to kind of scour, here go all of the messages, recognizing that youth have been a part of this the whole time. So we want to honor the work that youth had already done, but see, does this feel applicable to Native youth? Does this resonate with you? And if not, how can we adapt it to be more representative of you? And for the most part, it was applicable. There were some design changes that we felt like needed to happen. Some of the stress busters that we had could be more applicable to Native youth, but really it did hold up, which was great. And so we looked at what needs to be updated, and then what kind of outreach needs to happen. As I mentioned, there's already things happening in Indian country. So instead of having like, we're going to start a Live Beyond healing event, we said, hey, we already have GONA, which is Gathering of Native Americans. We should uplift and support that. Things that are already recognized by the communities as things that work, things that we say are impactful in the community. And so we'll support that. And additionally, I don't know in this room how many people work in Indian country, but it's very diverse. So there are 110 federally recognized tribes in California and dozens more that are not recognized. And in the 1950s, California was a relocation area. So there are thousands of Native people who are like me, who are, our tribes are from elsewhere. So when we talk about culture in California for Native people, it doesn't look the same. So, what culture looks for me as a Native person is completely different than Paul's culture. So there might be some things that are similar, just as like he's from Sacramento too. So as urban Indian people who live in Sacramento, we have a shared culture, but that doesn't mean that our culture is the same. So how does that look? What are shared things that we have? And that's something that comes from us. It cannot come from any other group coming in and doing that for us. And so that's why it was super important to have this be community-led, youth-led, Native organization-led from the jump. So I was very grateful to the Live Beyond campaign to give us that freedom to adapt it the way that it needed to be adapted. So if we go to the next slide, you'll be able to see some of the youth that we worked with, some of the things that we did. And Paul, I'll let you kind of talk about the process that we went through and what it was like to work on the statewide campaign.
Well, it's a daunting thing to say, like, oh, I work on a statewide campaign. I'm 20. It's nerve-wracking at times, but it really was a pretty seamless working with them. They really did value our opinions, and everything that we felt we wanted changes was met in a great way. I've brought the materials we made all across California from north to south, giving it out to Native communities, and I haven't gotten a single bad review on it. So it's fantastic that even, the little kids like the healing journals, even the elders do, and they all have different value. They see value in it in different ways, but they all find value in it. It's been an amazing experience, and I really do hope that Live Beyond continues on to help these communities in a direct way, rather than the broad spectrum actually giving it to our hands. I've been able to see a direct one-on-one impact in these communities. So we have the stickers here. So you saw the previous stickers in a different slide. So we just kind of, we put some designs in that resonate with Native people. The smudge stick, the abalone shell, that's something that's not synonymous with all natives, but it's something that if you're Native, you will most likely understand it. Just trying to get the broad spectrum of what being a California Native is. So that's what we did here. Or like the grandmother and grandson here, they're community members. They're from our community. People know them. Just to be more direct, the book list is all Native. We all made it together. Well, one of us did more, but it's all right.
And yeah, and so with the stickers, those were actually designed by a Native young person in the Bay Area. So we did work with a Native youth designer to create those, and with our Native youth ambassadors. So originally, the one with the smudge stick, it did have just the sage, and then Paul was like, okay, well, usually, when I smudge, I use an abalone shell, and so we were able, to have those conversations back and forth to really adapt them. And the bottom one you can't see as clearly, but it is like beadwork, which is something that translates over to a lot of Native people as well. So really just kind of having those touches that things that, as I mentioned, we're a very diverse community, but things that would kind of translate across the community. And so the next one, you'll see that we do have there was the book list that Camelia had mentioned before, and so we were able to create one just of Native authors. So we're really excited to be able to bring that in, and then with the Native bookmark to have a quote from a Native author, and just really to highlight that on the website. And so one of the big events that we were able to support was there was a Native Youth Leadership Conference here in Sacramento, and we were able to bring out Lakwa Cox, who was on Marvel's Echo, which was a Disney Plus series, and so she was able to come as our keynote speaker and share her story, which was amazing. And she shared about her time being on this Marvel show, which obviously should have been the best time of her life, but she was away from home, away from her tribal people, and her dad was really sick at the time and was hospitalized, and so she didn't have her support system, and so then she was turning to alcohol, and so what should have been the best time of her life, where as young people, they're looking at her like, you're a famous actress who was like on Disney Plus, you know, the best time of her life was actually like the worst time that she had. She was away from her culture, away from her community, and how, you know, she had to overcome that adversity, you know, and that she had people in her corner, like the Marvel family, you know, who really stepped in to help her and her family coming through and going back to culture, you know, to get sober and to be able to move past that. And so it was just really inspiring to have her there for the youth to be able to hear her story. So we were able to do that. And our Native Youth Ambassadors, you know, they created a workshop around the idea of the Live Beyond campaign and the we had mentioned the stress busters, so how to implement that in an Indigenous way. And on this picture on the left, you'll see, and in one of the other photos we had, the herbs. So with the stress busters, some of them are like, you know, healthy nutrition, getting outside, mindfulness. So we had looked at, okay, as Native people, what does that look like for us? And so we had talked a lot about herbalism and getting back to traditional medicines and traditional herbs. And so one of the activations that we do when we go out to events is we bring herbs that, you know, are that we know about and that are kind of easy to grow here, like lemon balm and chamomile, lavender, stinging nettles, and we take those with us. And so we have an herbalism guide that talk about the properties, like the medicinal uses of them, and we hand them out for free. So one, people can use that as like a stress buster. So whether it's like using them as teas or just to smell or as a part of their like meditation practices, but just really tying, you know, this Office of the Surgeon General stress buster back to what we as Native people do anyway, and how our traditions, like we're not reinventing the wheel, like our traditions already help us heal, and just kind of like making that connection a little bit stronger. So you'll see that through these pictures as well. And then one of these pictures, Alakwa Cox posted us on her social, and that was very exciting to me as a grown up. So I made
Very
sure to put that on
exciting.
there. Yeah, I was
Yes.
very excited.
That's a
So
big deal. That's a big deal. Yes, it's been such a joy working with you all. Just I think, as Janine said, just being able to kind of not reinvent the wheel, that's been really key. And also just frankly leads to this idea of this is, you know, authentically integrated rather than creating something new for the sake of creating something new. Got it. And I know, Janine, I'd love for you to go through some of our we're also going to share with you just some of the campaign resources that we have. So all of these are available on our website for download. You all are not a huge group. So if you are interested in receiving a toolkit mailed to your organization, we likely can accommodate that and get that to you. I think I would just ask, send an email after, we can do that, but I will let Janine kind of go through the resources now, but just let you all know they're all available digitally.
yeah, so if you go to livebeyondca.org/campaign-resources, so there are the commercials that Camelia had shared. There's the Accessing Help Patient Guide, which you're going to go over that more in depth later in this presentation, so we won't go over that. There are the posters, so we shared that we do have the Native poster, but there are different posters that you can put up in your offices depending on the populations that you work with. There's a Stress Busters pocket card, which I love. So you can't.
There you go.
Oh, there. Oh, sorry, I was jumping ahead.
No,
we'll go back and forth. So I love this card. So depending on, and you can just fit it right in your pocket. So if you need to like focus on box breathing, or if you just need to take a moment, there's those tips in that way. But then there's also like music meditation. So there's a Spotify playlist if you need to relax. It's just really quick ways to focus on your healing. And so there's that you can download. Obviously, there's the stickers, the healing journal. This is like the hottest ticket item ever, because we always talk about journaling. I don't know about you. I cannot journal. I can't just sit down and write, but it is a guided journal. So there's questions in there, but there's also some like free pages that you can just write. Talks about your mood. And as Paul said, when he goes up and down the state, like the elders love it, the youth love it. It's just really something that is easy to use for everyone. There's the palm card, like what are ACEs, and then also, the different stress busters and what does that look like? Because ACEs is kind of like a high level thing that's hard to explain, and this really breaks it down easy for people to understand when we're talking about ACEs and talking about toxic stress. And then the bookmark with the ACEs reading list on it. If we go to the next slide, and then just a fact sheet about ACEs, different activation ideas. So if you were going to do something for like May is Mental Health Month coming up, or Mental Health Week in October, or Suicide Prevention Month in September, there's ideas on ways that you can activate with the campaign. And then, you know, we also have additional languages available, so Spanish, and then there's 7 other languages. So if that's materials that you need, those are available as well.
And one of the recent things we came out with is the whole provider toolkit. It's really geared towards not just healthcare providers, it could be mental health providers, it could be peer support specialists, but it's really kind of intended to be very broad. But one of the things we made is we worked with Satara and the youth advisors to really talk about what does that guide look like for someone who wants to take that next step? Because we talk a lot about the things you can do, stress busters, there are these evidence-based things you can do likely in your home, you know, don't require really resources, but definitely knowing that, you know, ACEs are things that are traumatic and you might need that additional support, whether it's a mental health therapist, talking to your doctor. And so this was a chance to really give that deep dive for young people and really talk about what that is. And Satara, I'll just hand it off to you to kind of talk a little bit more about this resource and what it is and how it's also been adapted for youth.
For sure, thank you. Yeah, so as Camilla mentioned, like it was really great that the Youth and Young Adult Council had the opportunity to provide feedback on this guide. One of the main feedback was like about ways how we can make the guide less text heavy. And then the main feedback that I would say like we received was actually on the picture that was used on the first page, on the cover page. And you can see like the picture on the top right hand side. This one is the one that was, this is the final picture, the one that was changed after the youth feedback. And you can see like this picture is very inclusive, like it has a collaborative feel to it. And the previous picture was kind of depicting more of a traditional talk therapy. And we had a picture of a youth talking to an adult while they're like taking notes. And the Youth and Young Adult Council like mentioned that they wanted an image that like better represents a sense of connection, collaboration, and also peer support rather than like a clinical dynamic. And then also like just overall, their feedback really emphasized the importance of showing youth in an environment that feels welcoming and it's inclusive and it's also like representative of their diverse experiences.
Thank you so much, Satara. And yes, and a lot of this guide really breaks it down, and we have posters that go along with it so that, you know, a lot of practices we've worked with have put the posters up, and then there's a QR code that goes to the guide, but it really dives into also like, what are your confidentiality rights you have in California? What about if you're a minor? How do I ask questions? How do I find a provider that's right for me? And also the idea too, that like you might not find a provider that is, you know, maybe you're looking for mental health therapy and that person isn't a right fit. A lot of young people might not know. You can still find someone, or you can advocate for looking elsewhere, or kind of thinking about someone who's a better fit for you, but just giving those guidance and tips, how to start a conversation, how to, exactly. Starting the conversation, having some prompts, talking about your feelings, but just really breaking down what that looks like for young people, especially knowing that it can be scary if you want to actually reach out for help. And then also linking to many resources, like right now there's Soluna. It's an app that the state has. It has free on-demand mental health support, but also can connect you to other resources as well. And then just as I mentioned, yeah, there's a whole toolkit for providers. It includes posters, this tip sheet as well for providers to kind of orient them to the campaign and what's available, the palm card, and then that patient guide, which we'd love to promote because a lot of folks have found it very helpful just to kind of, maybe they get screened for ACEs and it's like, well, what now? What am I supposed to do now? And it helps answer that question of what you can do next, both for yourself and if you need additional help. So real quick, I'm going to go through this last section, and then I want to stop for questions. We've been doing a lot of outreach with this campaign. One we've been really excited about is partnering with the Drew League. The Drew League is a pretty notorious basketball league in South Central LA. They bring through lots of talent, NBA, college talent. So we partnered with them all summer and did lots of family pop-up events. And then we also did a lot of vignettes with a lot of their talent. So folks who have been these pro basketball stars and coaches, but also talking about the adversity they faced in their childhood and then how they've healed. I don't think I have as much time to show this one, but if you go to our channel on Live Beyond, we have several vignettes of folks that are talking about basketball, but also not just basketball, but mentorship that you get through sports and through community. And so it's a really beautiful series, lots of really great authentic content and some pretty big names. And if you're following basketball, but please do check those out. They are really great content. And then, one other thing we've been doing, we're trying to also be around California. So obviously our billboards are around, but we did a partnership with the Lunar New Year celebration in San Francisco. We're partnering with CIF, the California Interscholastic Federation. This was all the high school sports to talk about our campaign and kind of in these places where parents and caregivers might be. We recently filmed a PSA with Dr. Diana Ramos, the current California Surgeon General, talking about the campaign. That's available and actually going out to some media outlets. And there's a picture of our campaign on a billboard. So it's out in the world. If you see it, now you know. If you know, you know. And I think what I'll do is I'll just real quick, I'd love to just do a quick roundtable of any closing thoughts from all of our speakers. You've heard a lot from me, but I'd love to kind of just any closing thoughts or takeaways for the group, and then we'll go to Q&A. So maybe I'll start with Satara.
Yeah, I think I would say the campaign was a true collaboration. It really felt like a bi-directional partnership, and just having youth at the table was huge. And we were part of the decision making from day one in terms of like the name of the campaign, the taglines, everything. And I think that authenticity aspect and the fact that we were able to like submit our real stories and like videos and things that are authentic have been the reasons why the campaign has been perceived very well. I'll pass it to Paul.
I would say my key takeaway from this whole experience is that Live Beyond really cares about their outreach. Having youth involved in the entire process and giving, the Native portion to natives to do it, it really shows that they took the initiative to do the extra mile. And I personally have seen it work, and it just makes me happy that I can be a part of it. Oh, and I'll pass it to Janine. Yeah.
Thank you. And I would say from an adult standpoint that I think one of the things that sometimes I see missing when we co-create with youth is sometimes we're like, all right, young people, you're young, so you have this, and that there has to be kind of this support set up. I can't expect that when I was working with Paul that he would know about ACEs and toxic stress. Like there has to be an educational piece to it that we are educating about whatever topic that we were talking about, but then once this education piece is done, like then giving them the freedom to make those decisions. But sometimes I see that kids still, like youth still haven't learned anything because we're too afraid to like have it be bi-directional or teach them, that we just are like, here, you're on your own. And then that's not helpful either. So making sure that we're also taking the time to educate and make sure that they're still learning within the process.
Much. And yes, I will say, I think just that bi-directional thing, one thing we've also done, as I mentioned earlier, we've had media training for a lot of our youth advisors, but like Satara, for example, co-wrote an op-ed with Dr. Diana Ramos, like earlier, well, it might have been last year when we launched, but just also finding ways to elevate voices. And also I think to both Paul and Shane's point, like, let's make sure that when we work with young people, they're getting something out of this too. They're learning skills, they're getting professional development opportunities. Obviously goes without saying being paid for their time, but just really thinking through kind of what that looks like, and making sure that it's a two-way relationship, and not one that, is exploitive or, anything like that. That can happen very easily when we think about youth co-creation or working with youth, but making sure it's bi-directional and really tries to shift power when we can. So with that, we have about 9 minutes left. I'm gonna just real quick, I want to just pop our information on the screen. If this whole PowerPoint is available as a PDF on the WOVA, I think I'm saying it correctly, that app, so it's all there. As I mentioned, we have about 46 or so of you on the call, but if anyone would like to have a toolkit mailed to their organization, we can certainly accommodate that. So please reach out. We'd love to mail you some of our materials. Most of it is available digitally. But again, if you are like super excited by what you saw and want to bring it to your organization, or whatever that is, we'd be happy to help do that. So please reach out. And at this point, I'd love to take any questions. I don't know if I see everyone's cameras on the screen. I think many folks are off camera, but we have some time left and would love to hear any questions, thoughts, feedback, anything that came up. Thanks for also staying along and bearing with this presentation. I know it was a long one, but we hope you all found it really valuable. So thank you.
So I'm wondering if we have schools that are reaching out to us. We're doing a self-healing communities project in one of our communities, and schools are reaching out and saying, we need this in the schools. And so I've been saying, live beyond. Like, is there a way to connect with ambassadors that could actually show up and help us message it and get people excited about it? Like, the toolkit sounds great, and we'll definitely take advantage of that. But we have, we're planning to show the film Resilience in April. Like, are there Live Beyond folks who could come and be a part of that event?
Yeah, thanks, Barb, for asking. So depending on where you are, as you saw, a lot of our advisors and even Janine's team, that we are across California. So I think if you have a request for an event or something like that, just let us know. We will do our best to accommodate. We do have folks and they're part of our campaign ambassadors, so we can send them out to go and be there and speak or table. They love, having them speak about the work organically is it's top notch. But if not, I think also there's virtual opportunities too, if that's a thing too, if for any reason we can't make that work. But yes, the answer is yes. Just let us know and we can try to figure something out.
So reach out through the info at Live Beyond. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm super excited about this campaign. Any other questions? Well, I should have shown that Drew League video then. Yeah, I would just say the best content you can probably find is a lot of the stuff on our social channels. There's a lot of great stuff, even from like a lot of the events that Janine does. You saw some of the photos there, but also when we have a lot of youth making the content, a lot of our youth co-creators, their videos on the website are also on our social channels. And so just very inspirational. Please, if you we worked a lot with AAP, ACEs Aware, and they had sent out the provider toolkit to the top 100 ACE screening clinics across the state, all Medi-Cal clinics, medical serving clinics. So we've been trying to also get the healthcare provider toolkit out. We realize though that doctors might not be the best people. Maybe it's the person at the front desk who might be the best person to talk to, but also we're trying to for many organizations that do screenings and want to direct folks for a place to go or a place to learn more, Live Beyond maybe can help fill that gap. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining. Would love to give you some time back. Thanks for being a part of this amazing convening, and thanks for giving us your energy and time and space to share this great presentation with you all. So thank you so much. Thanks, Janine, Paul, and Satara for your time as well.